Hey guys, welcome to the definitive ranking of Skyward Sword.
Oh yeah.
One of the more polarizing games, I would say.
Yeah, that's got a lot of lovers, a lot of detractors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you haven't, I think neither of us had played this in a long time.
This is so far the longest gap it's been for me in playing one of the games
Okay.
we're talking about, yeah.
Like you hadn't played this since like 2012 or something, or 13?
No, I played it when it came out.
Okay.
And then a month later, I remember the holidays, home for the holidays, I made my friend play through it. I was like, you gotta play this game.
Okay.
And I watched him play through the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then, the only time I've ever touched it was for the marathon when we would do like our team races
In small segments. Okay.
Yeah, so I really haven't played it since release.
Okay. Were there a lot of things in this game that were like new that you didn't remember?
I was surprised at like how I was remembering all these like little things.
Okay.
Like, oh yeah, I just like kind of naturally did some puzzles, and then other ones like genuinely stumped me for a minute.
Okay.
Like, and then there was like some that's like a nice in between where I was like, I remember the gist of how to solve this, but I like couldn't quite put it together right away.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun to revisit this game.
I'm sort of in the same boat. I played it like 3 or 4 times. I think 3 of them were like 100% runs.
Sure.
In the first like 6 weeks of its release when I was doing the guide and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Then I put it on the shelf. I think I played it back in 2013.
Okay.
And I hadn't touched it since in terms of all the way through, other than this little segment. So a lot of new, clearly revisiting this as like not just like a refresher from a year ago. But let's jump into it.
Okay.
Let's talk about the world of Skyward Sword.
Sure, yeah.
I gave it a 2.
Yeah.
And you gave it a 2. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, so I mean, this is one of the categories where I feel like there's a lot of negative connotations associated with it.
Okay.
For many reasons. And I kind of did feel that way about like the sky is the obvious thing people go to right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did feel that this time around. I did kind of wish there was more going on up when you're flying around, because that's kind of like one of the main things of the game is you're in the sky. You're flying on a bird. And that being said, like too, there's just like a lot of it just doesn't look as great as I remember when you're flying up there.
Okay.
Because I think because of technical limitations.
Yep.
There's like a lot of cloud cover to kind of hide things, so it's sort of like why it's so like smoky up in here. It's not as much as like the fog in Silent Hill or anything, but so that's the first thing. And then the other thing I think people are kind of negative about that I was a little bit more positive this time was down on the surface, because it doesn't have like this big open world sort of feel.
They're not connected,
which I think I would have been more forgiving of if the sky maybe felt a little bit more fleshed out, you know? Mm-hmm. Like the sky itself actually maybe only feels like it, in terms of what there actually is, only like part of a region of a larger world too.
Right, yeah. It does give that vibe a little bit.
It feels like a very local area. Because there's like your main island and then like the Lumpy Pumpkin and like some businesses, but it doesn't feel like a big world. But I kind of sort of liked the surface worlds a little bit more than I thought. The way they're laid out, like the level design of them, actually kind of reminded me of areas in some of the Game Boy games.
Okay.
Where it's like if you play Ocarina of Time, you go to most areas and it's all pretty accessible and navigable and you can just go wherever. Mm-hmm. Whereas here it's like in the Game Boy games where to like get from one area to another, it's actually kind of a bit of a puzzle, a bit of a trek, and I kind of like that, and I think I would have been a little bit more forgiving of that than than if the sky was a little bit more filled out, and they reuse a lot of those areas too. Yeah,
especially Faron. You go to the same portion of Faron 3 times,
and our one of our staff members, Rod, made that joke about the Silent Realms.
Oh yeah.
Feeling a little bit like Tony Hawk levels.
Yep.
I actually kind of feel just in general those areas kind of are like that, because you kind of repurpose the same areas to have different objectives. I actually felt like it reminded me a little bit more of like Mario 64 levels.
Okay.
Where it's like now you're here, but it's a little bit different, and we mixed it up.
Yeah.
But it's like on a larger scale, I guess.
In particular, the Faron region, I think.
Yeah.
Specifically, because you go there 3 times, and then even the 4th time with the Silent Realm, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I even think of like you have like the Bakulan base and stuff like that. So I do like going further into there, as there is new stuff. So I'm not as opposed to that, though. I think it's maybe done better in those other games that it's compared to. So I was kind of mixed on it. I was mostly like the sky really kills it for me, but I couldn't go totally negative because I do like in like the areas like Skyloft and everywhere you go. Actually, some of the characters you meet, I really like all the characters.
Okay, so not to like go over the same material. Actually, the sky was not a big factor for me.
Okay,
I don't think it's a big deal. It only started becoming a bigger deal really, really late in my quest. When I was doing like attempting 100% playthrough. So I was like, oh, there's goddess cubes here and here and here. So then it's like endless flying.
Or it's like you have to go to in the Thunderhead to learn a song, and then you have to fly back, and it's just kind of like between there's not much going on.
Right. I didn't feel that was a big deal because it doesn't take very long. It takes a minute, 90 seconds or whatever to get from the ends of the map. It's not like some other Zelda titles.
That was still a negative to me because I was like, well, at least it's not taking long isn't really a great thing to think about.
You're definitely right about that. Yeah, it's not very good, but it's not. I don't think it's like something that's like atrocious where I'm waiting 6 minutes to get from place A to B.
Yeah.
That's more apparent when I'm going for 100% when there's cubes all over the place and you're just doing a lot more fun.
I at least liked when there was cubes because it was like, oh, there's like a reason to stop places, and check out what's there.
Yeah. What I actually didn't enjoy with the world is so Skyward Sword introduces a lot of new, not just characters, but like character races to the series. Maybe it's because they were all new in the sense, like almost none of them were like in prior games. There was a few Gorons in here, which were nice to see. But there's the Kikui, which I like. They're fun. I wish they came back in the other games. Like they're cool. I like the robots too. Yeah. There's not many of them though, but they're just kind of funny. I like Scrapper in particular.
They're all kind of goofy too.
Yeah, the guy, I forgot his name, the captain who go on the boat ride with him. He's cool. But like then there's like the Uke. I don't know why. I don't like their character design, like just the look of them. And I don't really like, not the Uke, the Mogma. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Let me start. I don't really like the Mogma too much. I don't know, it's just the character design. They look a little awkward.
Oh, I like them.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they all have great, like every like, all the characters, even them, have like all little bits of personality that are all kind of fun.
Okay. I just feel like I never... You interact with these Mogma regularly throughout the game, and they appear in other aspects. But like, I never like fell in love with these characters like I did with some of the races from some of the prior games. Both like the big boys, like the Zoras and the like Kokiri and the Rito, as well as like the little guys like the Anuki, who I like kind of like.
Yeah.
To me, there's something missing about these guys. And then there's that fish race, the Pirellas, which I don't know what they are.
They're all pretty funny though. Even they're funny. But I don't know. I felt like the game had a lot of heart in it. A lot of, especially all the characters on Skyloft.
I like Colin in particular.
Okay.
And I like the whole vibe of Colin, Stritch, and Groose.
I really thought it was funny how he like didn't care that Groose was gone, and he's like, I'm taking his room.
Yep.
I was like, I love this guy.
He kind of like throws him under the bus a little bit, like like,
he does not care.
Yeah, he's such a bad guy.
It's actually kind of a funny kind of detail later, because then in the story, Groose is like, tell my guys what's happening. They're probably worried about me.
Yeah, and they're not at all. Yeah, or Colin in particular. Yeah.
So I mean, it's like there is a lot going on there, but it's mainly like kind of the going from place to place in the game that kind of kills it for me.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about it because you kind of reiterated. I'm not a fan of the overworld. I don't like it. Both the ground and the sky. The Thunderhead is weird. It's maybe the weakest overworld, and I don't like the races. But some of the characters are okay.
Okay,
are really good actually. All right, let's move on to the art style, which both the staff and the community both gave it high remarks. I like it. I gave it a 4.
Yeah, that's a good score.
I think it's good. I think it's one of the better ones, maybe one of the best ones.
I think it's one of the best. It's not my favorite. There's other ones I gave 5s, but I do think it's one of the best. And there's just all these little details and things that I really appreciate. Just like there's definitely a lot of care put into a lot of the designs, and many of the locations are different, like diverse. Like the dungeons are all diverse looking in their design, but still they're all very ornate and beautiful.
I think in particular, coming off of the prior 3D Zelda game to this was Twilight Princess, and I remember when they first introduced some of that initial artwork, it looked like it was going down the same route of Twilight Princess. But then the first gameplay came out, and it was like all bright and colorful, and they showed the Faron Woods, and I remember immediately falling in love with it. And
yeah, me too.
This is the Zelda I want in terms of art style, and I don't think it's lost any of its charm. I didn't give it a 5 because I do think there are better art styles out there.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I just kind of have it in the canon of the better ones. Like, especially I looked at what ones I gave a 4, and I was like, I think it's definitely better than those. So I put it up there. And yeah, you said it right, where it's like it kind of combined Wind Waker's like more like light and colorful style with like some of Twilight Princess's like more. Like Link's a bit more realistic looking in this and stuff. Right. So it's a good medium between the two.
Let's talk about the story. This is a weird one because so the staff gave it really high remarks. The community, this is I think the highest story we've gotten from both the community and the staff. I gave it a 5.
Yeah.
I know it's highly regarded. It does have some hiccups here. And I think that's shows in your score.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the story, but I think there's just so much padding in it, and in the pacing of it too. And I don't mean pacing in the way we normally talk about in pacing and progression, where it's like, oh, it's so long between the fun stuff. I just mean like certain story beats hit at weird times that I just didn't connect with it as much as other people do, which is, it's fine. I still think it's really held together, I think, with its character moments that it does have. But I don't know, some of them weren't as like I remember them from playing them and people talking about them, that these are like the big things that happen in it, and some of them just didn't stick with me as much. I think the biggest thing too when I think about the pacing is you get to a moment in the game when Zelda goes into her little lockdown, and I feel like, okay, here it is. It's time for the big confrontation, and it's like, no, now there's this there's this whole new chapter.
Right, the last third of the game,
and the story to me grinds to a halt in a way.
I think you're right with everything you just said. But I would also premise this by saying, like, in terms of like the fandoms I'm involved with and everything, like Zelda is not a story-heavy series.
No, me either. No.
And I don't know if any of the games do it amazing.
My ones that I give high marks are games that it's like simplistic but effective. Like I think Link's Awakening, I would give the best story because it doesn't beat around the bush.
Right.
And it's very cohesive with the game.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that's really the case here.
So when I think of story with Skyward Sword, I gave it a 5. Is that a perfect score? Like, no, there are flaws in this, but I think it's the best story in the Zelda series. That's the way I'm.
I think it might have the most story in the Zelda series, but I don't think that translates to being the best. Like, it's more cinematic than a lot of them. Like, some of the cutscenes are done in ways you'd never seen in Zelda before.
Right.
But I think compared to other stories, it's not actually that great. But I don't know.
So I would also include story / dialogue. I love the dialogue in this game. I love Girahim's dialogue in particular. I think I like his story progression a little bit too, and I like how menacing he is.
Well, I kind of like his story progression in that, but he like kind of doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Him and Link, which I think is kind of interesting. Most of the game is you chasing Zelda, and she's really doing everything, but you don't see it. and Girahim is chasing her too, and you're both failing to catch up to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the, not even the middle point, but where she goes back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like you're trying to figure out how to get back in time to actually finally catch up with her. And Girahim, he's like, tell me how to do it. He completely fails. And then he, at the last minute, swipes her when you least expect it. But it doesn't seem cunning. I don't know. It doesn't seem like Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, where he was like biding his time for you to like open up the Sacred Realm. He's just kind of like, he fails the whole time, and then he's like, okay, now I'm gonna swipe her now that they think they've won. You always beat him too.
Yeah, he never wins.
He never wins.
Yeah,
but what I find the most compelling about him is that he, like, just thinking about him in comparison to Fi, and like how, like, it just is interesting. It's like they're both kind of like these sword beings, but and she has like, doesn't really have any personality or anything at all, but he has a ton of it. And like, why? It's kind of interesting to me. And then he immediately, like, you just see the difference, like when Demise shows up and he just immediately tosses him aside. I find that kind of interesting, you know.
People talk about Groos's story arc a little bit. It's okay. I'm not in love with it, but I like how
it's more than we normally get in a Zelda game.
Yeah,
but
it's fun how he's still kind of like, he becomes a good guy, but he still has shades of his old self in there a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the end, he saves the day, and in that scene where he catches Zelda at the end, and I like Groose, and he's funny.
I like Groose. I really like in the beginning, all the stuff with Zelda in the beginning of the game, where they set up their like relationship in it. So it really does. I think it really does convince you that like Link would just chase Zelda everywhere and gain nothing for a while. And then what is kind of a big reveal is when she's like, kind of like, yeah, I've just been sort of making you chase me around. Like she says, like, I used you, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then like, I mean, you don't really get too much from Link as a character, but like, you know, that's kind of a moment where it just shows how heroic he is, that it's like he learns all this and he's still just concerned for his friend, which is what makes that moment where she's like locked away impactful to me.
Where he starts pounding on the rock.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotional moments in this game too. Yeah. I think that's one of them. I like the moment where, I even like the conclusion with Fi, where she's like talking all robotic, and then she's like, there's something about you like Hylians that I don't understand. And like, I can't compute it, but I think it's what you guys call happiness. Yeah. I remember liking that.
Yeah, but to me, that's again something that reminds me of something I've seen in other movies and pieces of media. Well, again, it's completely unearned in this story. It's not...
The premise of what I said at the beginning, though, is we're comparing this to Zelda, you know? And... you know, when we're comparing the story to, you know, like you mentioned Ocarina of Time story, we're not comparing this to, you know, the Titanic or something, like, you know, where...
I just think there's plenty of stories that have that almost same amount of character moments.
Okay.
Because she has, like, that one in this whole long game. I've seen that in smaller doses in other games where it's way more impactful.
I don't think it's just that with her, too. I love her relationship with Scrapper. I think it's fun.
That's all him, though. There's no Fi, like, character growth in this game to get to that moment. It just feels like thrown in there.
Okay, I think we're going to just disagree on the story here. We talked about Colin. I like the story with the hand,
that's what I'm saying. I like all these character moments. I'm just referring to the overall story of the game. It's not...
Well, yeah, this is the story. It's the story of the characters in this sense. It's like, you know, it's kind of got a Majora's Mask vibe to that, where it's like, there is the overarching story, but like, you know, the story with like Link and Patrice, for example, is not part, but it's awesome.
I think it's done better in Majora's Mask, actually. That's a great example, because but that's
I agree. Yeah, I don't know about better, but I think those are the best two stories, so I gave them both 5s. And we're going to move on to something we do agree on: the pacing and progression.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah,
it's totally atrocious,
and it's not just in the way we normally talk about, where it's like, okay, you did this thing, now here's some really boring thing for a long time. It is in almost every moment of the game. You'll go into a room, and a camera will pan to something you have to do in the room, and there will be like a character in the room, like a Magma or something, being like, so I think here you have to do a thing. And it's the thing the camera panned to. And then Fi comes out. You walk 5 feet, and Fi comes out and goes, "Master, I predict there's a 90% chance you have to do the thing."
Mm-hmm.
And and then you read a tablet that tells you have to do the thing. It's like the opposite of what, like how they added in Ocarina of Time in the water temple to show you that where that key is. This, like, and there were plenty of puzzles I was stumped by still, but there's so, like, just so much of walking around and, like, being, like, told by 5 different people, like, the thing you need to do. And so it's just like, I just want to do it. Just let me do it. I think it hurts the story sometimes, where it's like you have, in the beginning, you have to find your loft wing, and then it's like, all right, ready to progress. But it's like, well, first we got to teach you how to ride the loft wing. Then you do the wing ceremony. It's like, why can't the wing ceremony just teach me how to ride the loft wing? It's not that complicated. Yeah. Then later in the game, they want to give you an attack to use on it, but they're like, hold on, first we have to teach you how to use the attack.
After you've beaten 6 dungeons
and
at this point.
It's functionally the same thing. Like, I could not tell what was different other than I was spinning a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's everything in this. Like, it's aggressively slow.
There's just a lot of padding, I guess. I remember when I first played this game, way back in the day, after I beat the Fire Sanctuary, and then we had that scene with Zelda, like, sort of how you indicated earlier, like, I thought I was at the end of the game, but then they send you on this massive quest of, like, doing the Tad Tones, going through the Thunder Dragon. Like, this felt weird at that stage in the game because you're 25 hours into the game, and there's no dungeons anymore. Not that Zelda needs to always just be dungeon after dungeon after dungeon.
No, definitely not.
Doesn't necessarily, and I think this game actually does a great job in the first 6 dungeons of having unique stuff in between.
Yeah, I kind of like all that stuff. I even like some of the stuff in that final quest too.
I feel like it should have been either spaced in differently or just paced differently or made optional in some cases. Mm-hmm. It felt like it took me out of the sort of like with the story too, because you have all this. There's nothing happens in the story from the point of the Zelda, like that Zelda scene after you beat the 6th dungeon basically. Nothing happens between then until Skykeep. Like nothing, but it's like 5-6 hours of gameplay, and I don't know. I think it just brings it to a halt. But along those lines, and we're going to talk about this with enemies as well. The enemy progression is bad as well. Like, it's like you immediately fight like a Bokoblin, and then it's like you go to the next area. Oh, there's blue ones now. Oh, now there's electric ones. Now there's cursed ones. Like, it's just the same, but they all fight pretty much identical to each other. And it's the same thing with Lizalfos, the same thing with Keys. There's just new variants of it. And then you get to like the 40% mark of the game, maybe, by Ancient Cistern, and there's nothing new.
Yeah.
There's just nothing new. It's just the repeats over and over and over. There's a couple new enemies here and there, but like it felt like they threw everything into this first portion of the game, and then there's just not that much new. And then along those lines, we talked about Far and Woods. As much as I like the how like they use that area, by the time you've gone through the first 3 regions, you've explored like 70-80% of the entire world at this point.
Right.
There's a little bit more to explore in Lanayru later on,
to
an extent. You go deeper into the Elden Volcano, but like it's like the exploration, which I think is one of the most important factors of Zelda, is kind of gone there. Let's talk about the gameplay and the combat in particular.
Wow.
This is
I'm a little shocked, actually.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. I give it a 1.
Yeah.
I thought about this for a long time, too.
Me too, but wow.
It is what this game is. Like, the combat, the game was built around this structure of gameplay. And my primary, like, concern, I would say, is it's not consistent enough. Like, I just feel the technology was not good enough for this game. Because when it works, and it's so fun, and it's exciting. I like it. So many times I was, like, catching bugs, and I'm like, wait, why is the... All right, let me recalibrate. I played 30 hours. I probably recalibrated, like, 45, 50 times.
Okay.
I was recalibrating every 15 minutes, it felt. And it just gets frustrating. It's just, the technology wasn't there, I think. I think if they were to remake this game or whatever, if they had some advanced technology now where it just worked better, I think, but more so than that, way more than that, is sort of what I talked about earlier with the progression. Like, you fight Girahim for the first time, the whole idea is, you go here, he blocks here, go here, and then hit him. The game doesn't get any more advanced than that, I feel like, throughout the entire duration. In that same portion of the game, it's like you fight the Stalfos, who one of my favorite enemies, but like he'll block here. It's like, I'll hit him this way. And that's the same mechanic you fight with the Luzalfos and the Stallmaster, but that doesn't add anything in the entire last 2/3 of the game.
To me, that's another case of, I thought that was all appropriate. I just felt like the game goes on too long. So, like, if you cut off that last portion of the game, like, it's appropriate, because it starts off where it's just like one sword, and then it's two, and then three, so I think, it gets a little bit more difficult. But really what changes in the gameplay is just like the different items and the different puzzles surrounding with the items. To me, that's what makes it fun. To me, it was worth it. I understand plenty of people have the issues with how the controls work, but I think the sacrifices in like it not being perfect make up for, like, how fun it is, make up for it to me.
Yeah, we can lump in the items and abilities, because you mentioned it. That's the next. That's like the next category, because that is also, like, it's fundamentally tied to the in particular the combat, or just the controls of the game, I would say.
Well, if I was thinking of just the core items of the game, like, it's like a 5 to me almost.
Okay.
Because that aspect is so fun, and all the puzzles surrounding them are extremely fun. But it's some of the other things. It wouldn't, maybe it'd be a 4 because of the tech, limitations. But it's actually some of the other stuff that brings it down for me. Like the harp is annoying for one, and not it's like, okay, I want to compare the harp real quick to the spirit flute.
Okay.
And the spirit flute is way worse in what you have to do. But it conceptually, it's more interesting, and it's just more interesting and more unique.
Yeah.
The harp, it's boring. It's like, it almost shouldn't be there.
It should just be a button and you play it and it's done.
It's frustrating, when you can't get it, which is part of the problem. But really, my main issue with it is just doing this. And it's like, you learn different songs, but it's like, you can't play different songs. And that just drove me crazy. I'm like, why? It feels like just shoehorned in to this a little bit. And there's so many things that surround it. And it's so annoying. Like, there's 3 butterflies.
With like the bug net?
Yeah. No. With making the Sheikah stones come up, and you're just going, and so many of the harp songs, when you're watching the scene, this is not the gameplay, but it doesn't sound good either. It's just like the music playing and Link is going, like, what is this song? This song sucks. I don't know. That's one of the things that drove me crazy. There's a couple other little things, like, back to that pacing thing too, of like just being constantly sort of like told, like, every single step too, like, hold on, let me tell you about this. And I'm like, I'm already doing it. Just let me do it.
The big saving grace, I think, is the beetle as an item. That's my favorite item in this game. It's so fun to use, and when you're just flying around and you grab a bomb and you drop it in a hole, like, it's just... Yeah. And you're going through a narrow corridor. I like it, and I feel it works. It's fun. It gets really frustrating when things get out of sync and you got to I lose my mind for a minute. And similarly, I like the bug net when it works. But sometimes it doesn't work.
I kind of love when it doesn't. And I'm like, boom, 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 and
I'm like holding my Wii remote like this, and he's like this with the net facing the other direction. I'm like, what is happening? Like, recalibrate. Okay, there we go.
I also went negative on it because the flying is boring. They teach you a move later in the game that's already what you were doing.
One thing I want to get your opinion on, because this is always a controversial thing in the Zelda series. What did you think of the swimming mechanics in this game?
It was okay.
Just okay. Okay.
It's
not awful.
There were times where I was complaining about it, but I think overall I'm pretty neutral.
Okay.
So that's fine.
Is it a hot take for me to say that I think this is far and away the best swimming in any Zelda game?
I think it's fine. It's just sometimes if you're like, I need to go this way, it's like kind of annoying.
The only time I got annoyed is, again, when that 5% of the times where I have to recalibrate because the guy's not going the right direction. But otherwise, it felt like I was controlling the beetle. I'm just moving this way, and you're, like, swimming at, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's parts that, like, when you're in Lake Florida, when you have to, like, leap over stuff, it reminded me of playing as, like, Zora, Link, and Majora's Mask, where I'm, like, trying to leap over, but then I run into the wall, and, like, you're moving too fast at times.
Yeah, but, that was reasonable to me, though. If I messed it up, I'm like, well, I messed it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't, yeah.
I love the swimming, though.
The swimming,
think it's so much
was
better
good.
than almost any...
You should raise your score, then. There was another thing that was holding it down for me. Oh, doing the Skyward Strikes was, doing it to hit a, like, goddess cube or whatever was, like, fun enough. But in some of those fights where you have to do it on the fly and do it quickly, and it's like, that's when, like, the precision was bothering me. I didn't mind if I, like, maybe messed up a swing on one of the Stalfos. It's like, I'm pretty sure I hit left and it didn't go left. You know, I could get over that, but it's when I'm just like, and like things are hitting me, you know, like that. That'll come up maybe in some of the boss fights, but that's where you had to use it on the fly, and that kind of drove me crazy a little bit.
And going back to the combat in that sense, towards the end of the game, anytime I saw a Bokoblin or any enemy, basically, I almost always went for a Skyward Strike, and then I always just did a spin attack.
Oh, yeah.
That was just my go-to. Like, I forget trying to bam.
I would always just try to... from the beginning of the game, I would always just try to rush them and spin attack before anything went down.
You just brute force. And
I actually had kind of fun with that. Like, let's take them out before I get, like, really involved in a situation.
I remember a video, this is like 10 years ago, when the game was about to come out. Reggie Fils-Aimé was on Jimmy Fallon.
Okay.
And he had Jimmy Fallon fight against a Stallmaster. Mm-hmm. And Reggie's trying to explain to him, well, he's blocking this way. And you're trying to get him. And Jimmy Fallon's just going like this. And he destroys the Stallmaster. Yeah. And that in of itself highlights a little bit of the problem with the combat.
Yeah, it's like you can go into it trying, but you can also just flail. And sometimes it'll work out.
So let's talk about something I think we both agree was pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dungeons. Really high remarks from the staff, 4.4, and one of the highest remarks from the community, 4.2. The dungeons are, some of them are very iconic. I want to say two of them in particular, the Ancient Cistern and the Sand Ship, were both, I think, in our top 5 for best dungeons ever in the Zelda series, in our feature we had on Zelda Dungeon.
I think I had both of them in my top 22.
Having revisited the game almost 10 years later, does that hold true?
Yeah, the two that I had, I think, are two of the best in the series. They had some genuine puzzles that stumped me. I will say, even in those, even with being stumped, it still had that thing of, like, some of the puzzles are over-explained to you.
Okay.
Like, some of the big puzzles. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they just got maybe afraid after some of the earlier dungeons in the series that they're like, we don't want people to be mad at these dungeons. But that doesn't take away from those dungeons for me too much still. I still think they're pretty phenomenal. Even the other ones that aren't as great are still really fun, and the puzzles in them I think are really fun. I mean, that being said, it's not like my favorite set of dungeons overall.
Okay.
But I think it's really strong.
Yeah.
I was actually looking back what I gave. I haven't given any 5s yet in dungeons, which I look back on some and I kind of wish I did on them. So I'm not sure when I'll give a 5. Mm-hmm. Maybe Ocarina, but like this is pretty darn close to being one of my favorite sets of dungeons.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I went the one step saying like I really like the Twilight Princess dungeons, and there's a few games later that we haven't got to that I'm like, those are going to be 5s, and this is just a notch below that. Part of that is there's like I love the Skyview Temple. I think it's one of the great best intro dungeons. It actually gets diminished a little bit, the fact that you return there.
I like that, actually.
I think conceptually it's okay, but like it makes it feel like it goes back to that progression a little bit. Like, why are we going back here? And it's like not enough of the dungeon has changed. I don't know. I don't like that revisiting of the dungeon.
I thought that was really interesting. I actually quite enjoyed it, especially because the scenario was different too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was fun.
Those two dungeons we talked about with the Ancient Cistern and Sand Ship. Sand Ship in particular feels, it's so good. It's one of my it was one of my favorite dungeons when I first played it, It's dipped a little bit now that I know what I'm doing. It's not as like you don't have those moments anymore. But it's still fun to play through. I like the concept of traveling back and forth through time to change the landscape of the dungeon. Skykeep, as a whole, is one of the most unique dungeons. Just the way you play it.
Yeah, it's a slide puzzle.
Yeah, wasn't as good as I remembered it in replaying.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an okay version of like that final dungeon that has all the different elements of the other dungeons in it.
I love that aspect. That's literally what it is, because each room is, this is the Earth Temple room, this is the Skyview Temple room, this is the Sandship room.
And they all had like the puzzles that were strongly associated with it.
Yeah, and the music too from those dungeons return.
And I like that in the different areas you had a progression of the puzzles so every time you're in the Lanayru region, it's more time shift puzzles, and they didn't really mix those between the areas. They were kind of built for their own areas, but I think that's okay.
Dungeons were overall some of my favorite in the series, I would say. So this kind of ties in with dungeons a little bit, but the bosses along with the enemies. This, to me, was a tale of two worlds a little bit, because I've talked about the enemies. I don't like them. I don't like they don't progress further enough. Some enemies are just straight up annoying too. Like I hate fighting moblins. I hate fighting. I don't know if you like the big shield moblins.
Oh yeah.
You jump over them, you fall off the ledge because you don't know why.
I actually like fighting those. There's some enemy that I hated. I can't think of at the top of my head, but that's another reason I remember putting gameplay low.
There's those I think they're called centrobes. Is that the ones like in the mining facility where they're just flying and then
those do kind of suck because you have to wait.
You reflect, then he spawns his two little goons. You got to kill them. Then you got to reflect. It takes like 45 seconds or a minute to fight a single enemy.
There should be a way to do it quicker.
Yeah.
When you're later on.
That being said, some of the enemies I really enjoy the uniqueness of how to kill them. Like a Deku Baba, you can chop off its, whatever, its mouth. You can use the beetle to cut off its stem. You can throw a bomb and it'll gob it up and explode. You can shoot it with a bow. Like I like how you can use your slingshot to stun it. There's like all these different mechanisms to kill some of those. So they did a lot of it good, but just the lack of, I guess, diversity of them, and then lack of progression of them as you got deeper into the game, I didn't like. Probably some of the biggest complaints of the entire game is the bosses and the repetition of them. You fight Girhim multiple times. You fight Moldarok multiple times. You fight the Imprisoned multiple times.
All the bosses, I think, individually are pretty fun.
Yep.
But it is the repetition a little bit.
I feel like if enemies and bosses were separate categories, enemies would definitely get a 1, and bosses might get a 4 from me, actually.
Oh, okay. That's not how I feel about it. I feel split on both the categories. Okay. There's a lot of fun enemies to fight, but then there's some repetition, and there's a lot of fun bosses to fight, but there's some repetition.
Yeah. There's definitely repetition with the bosses too, because I mean, there's not that many bosses. The boss rush mode at the end has 13 bosses, of which 3 are Girahim, 3 are in the Imprisoned. Yeah. So it's like that right away. But my feelings about Coloctus, Uncle Coloctus.
Yeah, that one can bring it up. That one's a lot of fun.
I love just the atmosphere, the music. I always stand up when I play that boss. He's great. I love the atmosphere of the Scarvo battle as well. Yeah. And I love using my shield bash to knock him back.
That is very fun.
It's such a unique battle too. It's sort of like everybody wants to imagine a 3D version of Adventure of Link. Think of the Scarvo battle, I think. Okay. And I don't know if this is a unique opinion, but I really like the battle with Demise as well. I think.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I just doing the charge up attack was just what didn't do it for me.
Recently, we did a video talking about some of our least favorite bosses in the Zelda series, and we mentioned the Imprisoned. Having replayed the game recently, does that hold up, do you think?
The boss is okay, but you should only fight it one time.
Once, or even twice, I think I'd be okay with. It's just I actually felt that battle was not that bad anymore. I thought it was okay. Maybe it's only because I know what to do right now, and it's a lot shorter than I remembered. Yeah. For phase 1 and 3 in particular are incredibly short.
I didn't have a hard time with it really, but yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, I gotta do this again. It's that one fight, and then Tantalus, I feel like, had one more phase than it should be. It felt so long.
All right, let's talk about the side content. This one's unique because, the staff gave it a 2.7, which was one of the lowest scores. The community gave it a 3.2, which was this is the lowest category other than the pacing and progression.
Yeah.
But you gave it a 5.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know what's not to like about it, honestly. I normally give this category a 3 because I just don't normally engage too much with it. I don't really think about the stuff. It's just like whatever I find.
What did you love about it?
Well, I liked all the side quest stories.
Okay.
So I think that's where it shined to me, not in the story.
For sure.
But
that I would say those
it's not as cohesive as in like Majora's Mask, in my opinion. But
like the Andrew and Cafe story, that's totally optional, right? That's you pull that out of the story of Majora's Mask is still a fun.
Well, it's so much of it is connected to many other things in that world, though. But then I really liked the weapon system or the upgrade system.
Okay.
And like getting the things to upgrade your different stuff, and like I liked all the inventory management of like the pouches and the item checks and the different medallions you can collect, and getting the goddess cubes and flying up and looking for them and getting the stuff and being like, what do I want to bring with me? Okay, I'm going to this location, so I should probably bring this shield, but I'll have some of this potion in case for this shield. I just like doing all that.
Okay.
And then I liked, I don't know, there wasn't like I kind of like that they made it all into like kind of this tight gratitude crystal system too. It was kind of an interesting thing from I guess a story perspective, that you weren't specifically helping these people for personal gain. It was to get the gratitude, which you were then trying to help this other guy out with them. Now, granted, he's giving you rewards, but I thought that was kind of neat. And I liked all the mini games and stuff like that. All the different locations had the like very fun mini games for the most part. And yeah, I don't know. I just liked all that stuff.
Yeah, you made a good argument, I think, right there. Generally, I thought I loved some of the character quests in particular were good. Some of them I felt were like do you like Fledge's little quest?
Fledge? Well, which
he
one
wants to do the push-ups and you gotta get him the stamina potion.
Sure, yeah.
A little annoying that you had like I don't like the sleeping mechanic in this game.
It's awful. Yeah.
You got to go into a house.
That's knocking gameplay off right there.
Yeah, that's actually awful. Like that should just be.
Why? What is the reason for that? Like, because they are preventing you from flying at night, but what's the reason? What's the reason for it? Is it because like at night
it's harder to see? It's dangerous for your lawfling. They got bad sight. Is that what the problem is?
No, I'm thinking from a gameplay. It's a gameplay reason, but then they're like reverse engineered a story reason. Is it probably because they like things change at night and they didn't have a like way for it to change over, like for example like Beetle goes back to his place, or like people go outside or inside. I don't know.
I think they could have. You should just have a what's this in Wind Waker? There's the Song of Passing. Is it? On Windfall Island, time doesn't change, but you just play the Song of Passing. Oh, it's dark, nighttime. Like, get rid of this. Go to a bed and sleep and wake up. And
anyone's bed too.
Anyone. Every time you want to go see Batrio, it's got to be nighttime. Is it got to be nighttime for Batrio?
I don't think so. Actually, I was wondering that too, and then I think I went there during the day.
Oh,
I think it's to find him.
Yeah. I always make it. Okay, well, that just wasted a lot of time.
I think. Don't quote me.
Yeah. Then this is now I'm nitpicking a little bit, but like I like some of the mini games, but I'm annoyed by their lack of rewards.
I thought about that too. But that's not much different than in A Link to the Past. There's a ton of mini games. Usually you get a heart piece.
That's generally like...
Well, like there's like the shooting range in A Link to the Past.
That's the one that you don't get something in, I think. There's that little Minesweeper minigame. I don't know if you played that. The one on Elden Volcano where there's the bombs and the rupees.
Yeah, I love that game.
I'm like strategically thinking about like, okay, how can I maximize my... Wait, what do I get for winning? oh, you just get the rupees. Oh, and it's not an efficient game. Like that's like you go there to lose money.
But you still get all that kind of stuff you collect anyway. Like there's a lot of stuff to find outside of the mini games. So
yeah,
them being there is like a extra thing. It's, I don't know, fine.
There's also the bamboo cutting.
Yeah,
which is
frustrating.
It's frustrating, but also a little fun.
It is, yeah.
There's something about it that's just fun. Just the idea of going, that's what the game is. But it's like, what's the big reward is you get a monster horn, like
right?
Yeah. The a little annoyed with the treasures. Like you need. Okay. Oh, I go to upgrade. Oh, I need 6 tumbleweeds. Okay. Let me go grind tumbleweeds. Let me,
Yeah, I had that same thing too. But then I was like, okay, I don't need the big bug net, so I'm not getting all the tumbleweeds.
Yeah. Then it's like, oh, why don't I have any of these bugs? I need these bugs to upgrade these. So it's like you're missing thing. It's okay. There's things that could have done a little better. Like you get the treasure medallion. The bug medallion, where if you look at your map, it shows you where all the bugs are. Mm-hmm. I wish it went one step further and just told you which bugs are where. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's just these goddess butterflies. I have 75 of them already in my inventory. I don't need those. I'm looking for a Gerudo dragonfly. Like, where are you?
This made me think of what else took away from items and abilities for me, and it's almost a negative here, is the dowsing mechanic. You talked about the lack of exploration. It kind of kills a lot of the areas in the main game, because it's like, not only is everyone telling you exactly where to go, but then it's like, and now here's this feature that's going to tell you exactly where you need to go,
exactly to the spot where the kikwi is you need, or whatever.
It's like, I guess you can not use it. I guess it's helpful if you do need it, but I don't know. It really stuck out to me because I loved all the quests where it's like you had to find something for someone down below. But then it's like, I can always be like, I can douse for this. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I don't know, like it felt good to like realize where something was. Like, oh, I know where that is. But then I felt like I was just like following a sensor for some of the ones I didn't know. And I don't know, it kind of took away from it for me. Like, instead of like maybe talking to a Mogma and him being like, I'd like to go up in the sky and farm or something, and getting a better hint than that, and then realizing it, as opposed to, all right, where's the guy I need to talk to?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's optional. You don't really need to if I ask you. But and then it's a minor detail, but like I get it one way where she's like, oh, using it's like, oh, we can take some of the Zelda's DNA evidence that's left behind to calibrate your sword to find her and douse her for her. But it's another weird thing where it's like you talk to a woman at the Lumpy Pumpkin, and she's like, I need someone to come dig up here, and Fi's like, I can set your dowsing to find someone who
find a Mogma in the Elden Volcano.
It's even more vague than that, and I was like, how is that a sensor? Or like to find a crystal ball, and it's like, what? I don't know. But I still gave it a 5, so don't.
Yeah, I could have maybe given it a 4, but
that's all right.
What I did give it a 4 is the music and sound. By the way, the highest regards, from community and staff. Always the music. People love the music. We always end on a good note with these because it's always the music.
Always positive. Well, I maybe already said it before, so I'll just get the negative things out of the way. The harp songs in this game, like even outside of what Link's doing, most of them I heard, I'm like, the song isn't sound that good.
Okay.
But and some of them he does interesting things, but it really felt like offensive to the harp to me. And so every time those were playing, I was kind of like, this sucks. That being said, this is one of the best soundtracks in the series.
Yeah. I like when Zelda is singing as well.
That was great, yeah. And the harp there is awesome.
Yeah, it's so pleasant. It's soothing. I would say that's how I would describe a good portion of this soundtrack, is just very soothing. Mm-hmm. And there are so many songs that only play once in this, and then like when I'm like hearing them and I'm like listening back to the soundtrack, it's like, it's such a good song.
There's a lot of good themes that are reused in different, like
Fi's, Groose,
and they use them in the score and they tie their there's a part when like Groose is like gonna catch Zelda, they use his theme, but it's all epic now, you know? And it's like da 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 da, you know, like
he's walking.
And it has all these touches of, this is something it does better than any other soundtrack, is how it changes in the areas.
Okay.
And not just like there's the obvious like in the bazaar where you go to the different areas, but like in the dungeons when you progress and like more is added to it. That's something they took from like Ganon's Tower and Ganon's Castle and Ocarina of Time, where you go up and it gets louder and louder.
Okay.
Or in Twilight Princess it does that too. But this is like dungeons will have that, where you go to a different area of the dungeon and the music changes.
Okay.
And as you get further, it gets more.
I noticed that actually.
It happens everywhere in the game. It's really clever, and it happens. It's not even just the dungeons. It'll be like, if you go from past to present, like when you go to the present and things are more alive, like the music lightens up. They do in every area of this game. It's pretty incredible. And it really adds to the feeling of it. So it is. I gave it a 4, but I think it is one of the best soundtracks.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you, and clearly the staff and the community is as well.
But I think of those harp songs. I think of how memorable all the ocarina songs are from Ocarina of Time. But it's like, can you hum any of the harp songs?
No, I don't even know what they are.
Yeah,
I didn't know that they were different. Some of them
in such a musical game. It's just so weird to me that those. I don't know. But whatever, it was great.
So let's look at the final scores.
Yes.
And one thing I want to say before, I remember we've talked about this off camera, and you were like, this game you felt your final score did not represent what you actually think about the game. Because
I think, so I'm looking at the list, and I think Wind Waker and Skyward Sword on mine get a slight boost because they both look and sound so good, which is very important to a game, especially when that meshes in with the game. You know, it's I'm not one to say like that's not important, but I would weigh those strengths to some of the other games like slightly worse, or like slightly they wouldn't be as important to me.
So the weight of the categories is odd, and it benefits Skyward Sword more than most games.
Yeah, but it's only slight. Like I just think like I would probably put it, you know, if I had to just say off the top of my head without looking at scores, like below the two games that are below it there.
Okay.
Because I do really like those games. I really like this game too, though. So it's just kind of slight. It's kind of semantics, but I will say it's definitely happening there a little bit with the system we've devised.
Yeah. Well, Skyward Sword came in at number 5 right now for me, and I thought that was egregious that it was ranked higher than The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. If it was in the Minish Cap Moonraker belt, I'm okay with that. But I'm like, wow, the machine tells me this game is better than The Legend of Zelda. I don't know if I agree with that, but you know, the numbers don't lie, I guess, in this sense.
They spell disaster.
I guess they do.
I still feel like my overall list does kind of reflect my taste pretty well. So I'm not like pitching a fit about it or anything.
So it comes in currently in 5th place with amongst the staff. There's a whole like cluster that are all in that 3.5 to 3.9 range. Like every tenth of a decimal is represented now from 4.1 to 3.5. So amongst the staff, so it's a little more clustered, more middle of the road for the community, which is where I thought it would end up being.
Yeah, because it is, like you said, a polarizing game.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a heated. I think this is the most heated definitive ranking. Polarizing is the right word to describe this, because even I was like, man, Goo's getting heated here. I'm like
yeah.
You came into this definitive ranking with almost an agenda. Like you got this.
Well, it's almost like, yeah, like thing, because it's like I haven't played it in so long.
Yeah.
So it's like I had just all these like thoughts coming up. You know,
there's a little bit more passion, I think, this time around. But I think that's what happens with games that are polarizing. People, they have stronger opinions.
Well, yeah, because it does, like, you sort of read the debates people are having about it, and you participate too over the years that we have in like our Discord and stuff. And I'm like going into it both with the things that I were positive or negative about, like keeping those things in mind, being like, okay, let's see how this holds up to to what has been said over the years.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like kind of passionate about, where I was like, sometimes it's like, no, this is much better than what's been said. This isn't bad. Or then other things, it's like, this is way overhyped. You know what I mean? So yeah, I felt pretty passionate about it. Where it's like other games, we've just played them so much that like, I just feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I definitely hear you on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for Skyward Sword.
Yes.
So, looking ahead, for the month of March, we're playing The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah.
For the Nintendo DS. Another game that it's been a minute for you.
Just not as long, but slightly.
Okay.
Probably played that I played this out of order. Probably like a year after Skyward Sword, so.
All right, so as always, we have our poll in the description below. Let us know what your thoughts are on Phantom Hourglass by voicing your opinion. I'm excited about this one.
You love this game.
I do. I don't know how it's going to do with the machine, though.
I really like that game, too. I have fond memories of it, so I'm hoping it does well.
Yeah, I've played this a lot recently, too. So I'm going to have a quick refresher, but
you have to go crazy on it.
No.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next month with some more definitive ranking.